Okay. All right, there we go. Slideshow. Go. Sorry, give me 1 second. I'm just getting the slideshow going. Play from start. Okay, perfect. Okay, here we are. Sports nutrition, fueling to maximize athletic performance. That's me, Kathy. So for those of you that don't know me, I'm also recording this for others. So um, I have a biochemistry degree from Harvard. I'm both an emergency and a functional medicine physician. I've done 15 standalone marathons, including Boston in 2015 when I was injured. And it was freezing. And I'm a 10-time Ironman finisher, including the World Championship in Kona in 2023. And I'm here today to talk about how to maximize performance and health. So tonight we're going to talk about all things pre, during, and post race. What to drink, what to eat, how much to eat, and when to eat, and why. There is a lot of information that I'm going to be talking about, and there's a lot that I am not going to be talking about because of time. So feel free to ask questions afterwards, or we can continue this with more specifics in the future. So the very first thing that I wanted to talk about is hydration. Lay people call that drinking, because that's super important in especially long endurance events, but just in general as well. So water is absolutely perfect for anything short, less than 2 hours, cooler weather. Um, it's readily absorbed. It's basically, it's free. And essentially, don't mess with nature. You're supposed to drink water. Humans are supposed to drink water. However, when we're talking about longer events or hot weather, or if you happen to be a very, very salty sweater, you run the risk of hyponatremia, which is a low serum sodium. And so this is actually quite important. If you, especially if you find yourself caked in salt after a race or a training run or something like that, then you specifically have to pay more attention to your salt intake. And here's why. This is a little physiology. So, if you are taking in water without taking in salt, and you are getting rid of water, then your sodium in your bloodstream is going to be low. So that's on the right. So water will flow towards the more concentrated side. So if you have low sodium in your blood, then the water will leach out into your tissues. So that can look like pitting edema, or in the really bad scenario, you can get swelling of your brain. So you get brain edema. And this can be lethal. This is really, really important to notice signs and symptoms. And the problem is that look at the signs and symptoms of low sodium, and they could be symptoms of just being in the race: nausea, vomiting, fatigue, muscle cramps, headache, unsteadiness. I mean, who hasn't had that during a long event? So this is really important to make sure that you're taking in electrolytes. So who is at risk for hyponatremia? If you are slower, this allows you more time to drink. If you're smaller, it takes less water to cause dilution. If you're very salty, you lose more salt than you take in. If you're in hot climates, you need to drink more. So anytime you're drinking more, that means you're at higher risk. The longer the race, so endurance, the greater the risk. Cyclists, it's easier to drink on the bike than it is to drink while running. So easier to get hyponatremic there. And then if you're overzealous, so the people that start excessively pounding water before days before the race. So all those people are at higher risk. So basically, what you need to do is drink fluids with electrolytes if you're at risk. So electrolytes, right? Like who hasn't heard of electrolytes? What actually are electrolytes? Well, these are the main ones: sodium, chloride, magnesium, calcium, and potassium. But the main ones that we really need to think about supplementing during an actual event are sodium and chloride, which is salt. Just want to put this out there. Coconut water. Okay, some people talk about drinking coconut water. It's fine if you drink coconut water um, before, after. Do not use it as your sole hydration. It is rich in potassium and not sodium, and so it will not help you with hyponatremia, and you can get potassium toxicity, and that can actually lead to death. So, if you're drinking coconut water, drink like a coconut water. Don't use it as your fuel, your drink of choice. Um, Obviously, there are many ways to get sodium in. And unless you've had a study where somebody tests you to see exactly how much sodium um, uh, you sweat out, you're not going to really know. The bottom line is you're going to need to sense what your losses are. And so you're going to need to increase your sodium and your electrolytes in general when you are racing longer or when it's hotter, or if you're a saltier sweater. So there are pros and cons to all of these different types of uh, supplements. So salt tabs and chews are really easy to carry and they're available at aid stations. But some people like get really bad GI upset because they're so super concentrated. It makes your tongue peel. You need to drink water with it. By itself, you can't, it'll make you make you feel parched if you're just having salt in your mouth. Commercial sport drinks like Gatorade and Powerade are easy to find. They're convenient. They're cheap. They're available on the usually at races, many different flavors. But the cons are they have high sugar content, high osmolality, which we'll talk about later, and preservatives, sorbitol, and high fructose corn syrup. So a lot of times this will make people feel bad if they're drinking too much of it during an event. And we'll talk about what that means. You also have other specialized drink mixes like Scratch, Osmo, Tailwind. I mean, you name it, it's out there. Those are much better as far as having a salt sugar balance, and they're convenient, but they're usually expensive and unavailable at retail stores. But nowadays with Amazon, we can get almost anything.
No.
Oh, somebody said no. Why not just eat all the salt, right? Like, why don't you just eat a bunch of salt and be like, okay, I'm just super eating a lot of salt and I'll be okay. Well, the problem is that if you over if you take in too much salt or sugar for that matter, now you're not hypoosmolar. So when you take in fluids, remember what I said, the water goes towards the area of higher concentration. If you're drinking something that is super, super concentrated, the water is going to flow in towards that super concentrated fluid. So if you want the fluid to go out into your bloodstream, it needs to be a lower concentration than the bloodstream. So you need to drink something hypotonic. So normal osmolality in blood is 285 to 295. But typical sport drinks are higher than that. So 360 to 390. Things like Scratch are lower. So remember what I said is if you're taking in something hypertonic, it's okay. Like if you have one. But if you're having a race that's going on for 15, 16 hours and you're taking in a lot of these, now you're going to have a really high concentration. And what is that going to do? It's going to flood you with fluid in your intestines. And that does not look good, okay? You do not want this to be you, because then you're going to be sitting there waiting for the toilet and now say bye-bye to your PR and to a really enjoyable race. So as far as hydration, keep it simple. Water has it's extremely hypotonic. So that's perfect for shorter training or cooler weather. But if you are either working out or racing for more than 2 hours, or if it's really hot, or if you're a super salty sweater, then you need to take in electrolytes. Just keep them hypotonic. So you can actually dilute your Gatorade. So if you take in 1-to-1 Gatorade and water, then that actually minimizes that effect. So that was kind of hydration, a little bit in a nutshell. Next is fueling, which lay people call eating. So we'll talk about during training, race week, race day, and post-race. Okay, so during training, i.e. everyday life, we're going to talk about the important things like quality of food and macros. Quality is super important. So, if you're taking care of a sports car, you wouldn't put cheap gas in it. Well, don't put cheap food in your body. Same idea. Less crap, more food. The stuff up top is crap. Ultra processed, refined, artificial, as opposed to food. Organic, fruits, vegetables, omega-3, water, low-fat dairy, and we'll talk about these things. So what's the reason why quality is important? When you are exercising and life in general, we're having inflammation. And hard exercise increases inflammation in the muscles and in the gut and overall. So we need to combat this inflammation with the foods that we eat. A high nutrient quality will lower inflammation because it provides antioxidants and phytonutrients, omega-3 fatty acids, fiber diversity for your microbiome, polyphenols, all sorts of wonderful things that nature has ready-made for us to help reduce inflammation. High nutritional value foods that you should be really focusing on an everyday basis. Fruits like berries, vegetables, especially cruciferous vegetables, are highly anti-inflammatory. Lean protein, especially seafood, because of its omega-3 fatty acids. And actually, seafood could be higher fat, the cold seafood, because the fat is anti-inflammatory because it's omega-3. Low-fat dairy, heart-healthy fats like nuts and seeds, whole grains, cereals, and pastas because of the fiber, and spices like green tea, turmeric, and ginger. A calorie is not just a calorie. Processed foods and foods that are high in sugars and fats lack important vitamins, nutrients, and minerals. So if you've ever heard the term overfed and undernourished, this is the example. So for example, 750 calories, right? You look at the 750 calories on the left versus the 750 calories on the right. You can see which one has more nutritional value to you. Obviously, the stuff on the right. You have a rainbow of colors, high antioxidants. And I'm just just putting this out here just to show you that those things that I mentioned, the yogurt and nuts and fruit and whole grains and vegetables, all of those, if you are isocaloric, you're taking the same number of calories in and happen to have more yogurt or nuts or fruits or whole grains or vegetables, you tend to lose weight. But if your preference involves all the other things lower on the list, you will be moving towards weight gain. And look at French fries. They're like, I know they're delicious, but they're like the worst. So really try to, minimize the foods that are going to be not helping you in your goals. Because the reality is, when you're lighter, you're faster. And if you're eating French fries and you're gaining a bunch of weight, that's going to make you slower. You can't eat just about anything when you're exercising hard. I mean, sometimes it feels like you can, but one Heath shake is 2,300 calories. 3,500 extra calories is about 1 pound of weight gain. So I'm just letting you know that quality is important. Read your labels. Quality. This is what I'm talking about. The rainbow. And beyond quality, how about focusing on specific macros during training and more than 1 week before the race? So again, everyday life. So let's talk about proteins and carbohydrates and fats. I have to say my stance on protein has shifted a little bit. Initially, when I first started looking at all this research, I was thinking that you really could get away with less protein. But more and more studies show that you really do need to have a certain minimum amount of protein. So we'll go over this and explain why. Protein is important, obviously. It's the building block of all of our bodies, all of our cells, all of the parts of our body. It's composed of 20 amino acids and 9 are essential, which means you have to consume them in the diet. You cannot make it. And these essential amino acids are listed below. Isoleucine, leucine, and valine in particular are branched chain amino acids, meaning you have to take them in because they're essential, and they're a little bit special. Why are they important? They're important because they are principally metabolized in the skeletal muscle, not in the liver. And so because of that, leucine in particular is the one that triggers muscle protein synthesis. So what does that mean? Leucine is, like I said, an amino acid. Liver, so your body needs to make cells and proteins and hormones all the time. So your liver makes these cells and all these proteins all the time. But your muscle makes protein only periodically. And when does it do it? It does it when the body senses that there is enough protein to go around, because it prefers that you have proteins for your brain and your heart and your kidney and your liver than it does that you have protein for your muscles. The muscles are like the bank repository for amino acids. So if you have enough protein, then you can stimulate muscle protein synthesis. What is that trigger? That trigger is 2.5 grams of leucine. So what does that mean to you, right? Like who sits there and counts how much leucine is in something? Nobody. Well, some people, but you don't need to, because there are about 2.5 grams of leucine in 20 to 30 grams of protein. Animal protein, fish, etc., you don't have to have as much. You can go more towards 20. Plant protein, you have to go a little bit more towards 25 to 30, because plant protein is bound in the fiber. So in order to trigger your muscles to grow, you need 2.5 grams of leucine or 20 to 30 grams of protein. You can't just only take branched chain amino acids. Now, if you take them as supplements, that can trigger muscle protein synthesis, yes. But if you don't have enough amino acids to go around to make a complete protein, what happens is your body says, oh, I've got to make protein. Oh, I don't have enough. Let me take some from the muscle because the muscle is the bank, and let me make the protein. So now you're increasing muscle protein synthesis, but you're also increasing muscle protein breakdown. So branched chain amino acids are fine to take if you want to, but do not take them by themselves. Take them with food or a smoothie or something else that has other amino acids with it, other protein with it. So how much do we need altogether? Again, I've changed my stance based on the research. I used to think it was a lot less, and we talked about RDA, but for athletes, it really should be between 1.6 to 2.2 grams per kilo of body weight. So that's between 3/4 to 1 gram per pound. But if you happen to be small, you need to make sure you get at least 20 to 25 grams per meal to get the 2.5 grams of leucine. So at minimum, hit that target, 20 to 25 grams per meal. But you can get protein in anything. You can get it in plant-based foods, chicken, egg whites, mushrooms. Everything has protein. It's in everything. In some things, it's a little bit more available than others because of the fiber, but it's still in everything. So, don't feel alarmed that you're not getting enough. Just sometimes breakfasts seem to be the tricky parts. How often do you need it? You need it every 4 to 6 hours. So once you hit the muscle protein synthesis trigger, then you have an anabolic window, which means that's when you are building muscle protein. And then once you're done with that signal, then you get catabolism, so muscle protein breakdown. So if you're spacing it out every 4 to 6 hours, then you are building muscle throughout the day. Here's the problem. You can't store protein. So, if you're like, oh, let me just eat a giant hunk of steak, it's not going to help you because that still gives you about a 6-hour block of muscle protein synthesis window. Timing is everything. So space it out 3 to 4 times a day based on your size. So if you are a bigger person and you have more muscle mass, you're going to need to eat more frequently because it turns out when you eat more than about 40 grams of protein, you don't significantly increase your muscle protein synthesis rate. So if you happen to be bigger size-wise, you may want to eat 4 times a day, so 3 meals plus a snack, and space it out. Here's the other thing. You don't definitively need a post-workout protein smoothie. So as long as you are triggering your muscle protein synthesis, let's say you have breakfast and then you trigger it, you don't have to eat immediately after your workout as far as protein goes, as long as you're within that 4 to 6 hour window. The trigger for muscle buildup has already been triggered, so you're all set. What about supplements? There are lots of different supplement options. Whey protein seems to be a very popular one because it has a lot of leucine in it, and it's also very quickly absorbed. I personally prefer diversity, and so I go for a plant protein powder blend because I aim for 30 grams or a little bit more, especially because I add soy milk to my smoothies. And so I'm fine knowing that I can hit the leucine trigger with my smoothie since I'm getting more than 30 grams. Collagen peptides are something that you can add. They're easy to add in tea. And then we talked about branched chain amino acids and leucine. So those, I would say, really are limited if you really don't think that you're hitting your triggers, but you should probably really blend them with something else. Um, Protein bars often have high sugar. I don't love those. Some are good, some don't have that many ingredients in them. So just look at your labels. Also consider supplementing for protein if you struggle to get the optimal protein amount in everyday meals. You need to bump up a meal that's low in protein, often breakfast. Um, Eggs, for example, only have 6 grams of protein per egg. So some people are like, oh, 2 eggs. But that's not enough. So often breakfast is low. You want to increase muscle mass and you're committed to your workouts. You're over 65. There's something called anabolic resistance when you're older. You just need a little bit extra protein in order to make that muscle protein synthesis work. Or if you're just not eating enough calories overall. If you need to gain weight, there's some people that really need to gain weight, so they got to supplement. I had lost a lot of weight trying to get myself ready for Kona. I felt like I was eating all the time. I could not stop eating, and I was still losing a lot of weight. So protein is your go-to if you are needing to gain weight. Or if you're rushing and you don't have time to have a sit down meal, like you're on your way to work and you exercised and you're about to go to work, so you need to eat your smoothie on the go. So that's protein, super important. Next, carbohydrates. So carbohydrates get a bad rap because I think people don't realize what we're talking about when we're talking about carbohydrates, because vegetables also are carbohydrates. They are super important for any athlete. They're the primary fuel for muscles. They're converted into muscle glycogen. It's stored mostly in muscle, also in liver and in blood. Muscles can, depending on your size, you can store up to 2,000 calories of glycogen. Liver stores are around 500 calories of glycogen. And if you carb load your muscles, you can store twice as much glycogen as you normally would. When does glycogen run out? The harder you go, the less trained or efficient you are, or the less carb front loaded you are, the faster you run out of glycogen. So in moderate intensity, that's about 2 hours. And in high intensity, it's 1 to 1.5 hours. So I love this chart. So let's see, the carbohydrate. So this is how fuel use changes with increasing exercise intensity. If you see the fat is the black squares, and the carbohydrate is the I guess diamond. As your intensity goes up and your heart rate goes up, initially at rest and at low intensity, you're mostly using fat for fuel. And as your intensity goes up, you switch to carbohydrate. And the higher the intensity, the more carbohydrate is used and the lower the fat is used. So this is important in the types of racing that you guys are doing or the types of workouts. because if you run out of glycogen, you bonk. It's important to replete glycogen after a workout. So as I mentioned, you don't have to eat protein immediately after a workout, as long as you've already triggered muscle protein synthesis. But glycogen, you should eat carbohydrate within 30 minutes after your workout to maximize your glycogen storage. And here it says between 1 to 1.5 grams per kilo of body weight. I don't usually sit there and count. I just will eat some nuts and an apple and fruit and stuff like that. And if you keep it handy, then you can choose healthy, because otherwise you'll get hangry and have to wait in line for not such great stuff. Sugar and carbs are the devil. I thought carbs made you fat. There's a difference, right, in the types of carbohydrates we're talking about. Not only, as we talked about, is it the main source of fuel for your brain and your muscles, but the fiber that's found in complex carbohydrates feeds your gut microbes. And this is important. We are a symbiotic host with our bacteria in our bodies. We are more bacteria than human. And when we only eat simple carbohydrates and not complex carbohydrates, we are not promoting diversity. And diversity in the gut has been shown more and more, and this, it's early and it's in the studies, but more and more to improve inflammation and mood, and it's important in weight gain or loss and food cravings. But most importantly, as far as athletes go, it's inflammation. When you don't have the type of carbohydrate that your gut will eat, so good carbohydrate that your gut will eat are like fruits and vegetables, then you lose that mucin layer. Your bacteria start to eat the mucin layer because otherwise they go hungry. So the mucin layer is that green stripe. So this is an experiment in mice when they're fed, salad versus sodas and things like that. So it's really important to maintain your gut lining. At least 30 grams a day for fiber. But it's not like simple carbs are bad for you. They're not great for every day, but they are fantastic for race day. So generally, when you're training, have complex carbohydrates. They're slow acting, low insulin release, low glycemic index, so you're not spiking your sugars. Great for training. Simple carbohydrates, white bread, white pasta, white rice, sugar, honey, white potatoes, are great for race day. And we'll talk about why when we're talking about race day. So these are great for training days. Crucial. Okay, so question is sometimes, how much carbohydrate should I eat? Well, it varies. First thing you need to do, or the first thing I do, is prioritize getting the right protein, the right amount of protein and fiber. And then I vary my carbohydrate amounts based on my training volume. So in general, I eat a plate full of veggies and a palm-sized piece of something, fish or chicken or turkey or something, on a daily basis. If I am really bumping my training volume, then I'm needing to eat more carbohydrate, and also I eat more fat. So usually it's in the form of nuts and seeds. Monitor yourself. How do you feel? Are you feeling energetic? Then you're probably getting enough. Are you feeling sluggish? Maybe you're not getting enough. Follow your weight. If you're overdoing it, you will notice that your weight goes up on the scale. And fats. So fats are kind of malingered or maligned. I don't know. They're people don't like fat, but they are really important. Cell membranes, brain development, inflammation. That's how you transport your fat soluble vitamins. They reduce risk of heart attack and stroke, healthy fats, boost the immune system. They help to protect from dementia. So, what kinds of fats are we talking about? So, monounsaturated are most vegetable oils. Polyunsaturated are fatty fish, seeds, some vegetable oils. Saturated are found in animal fats, coconut oil, palm oil, and MCT. And trans fats are partially hydrogenated vegetable oil. Here you see that the higher the saturated fat and trans fat, the more likely you are to die. And higher monounsaturated, polyunsaturated fat, the less likely you are to die. In this study, they had to stop it early. They were giving people nuts and extra virgin olive oil versus a control low-fat diet. And they had to stop it early because the people with nuts and extra virgin olive oil were dying less often or less frequently. So they had to stop the study early. So these are the types of healthy fats. As far as omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids, omega-3 fatty acids, so they're both essential, meaning you have to take them in. Omega-3 is anti-inflammatory in general, and omega-6 is inflammatory in general. It used to be that there was a one-to-one balance between omega-6 and omega-3, but now it's up to 25-to-1 omega-6 to omega-3. So let's try to get some omega-3 fatty acids to decrease inflammation. So these are some examples of foods high in omega-3 fatty acids. Okay, and real quick on MCTs. MCTs get absorbed directly through the intestinal wall and they go straight to the liver. Some people think that they are magic. I disagree. Coconut oil has some MCT in it as well. They are saturated fats. They can be useful in neurodegenerative diseases. If you are really fat adapted and you are fully keto. The problem is that your body, if you're taking MCT oil, your body uses the MCT oil rather than your own fat or glycogen stores for energy. And so if you're trying to lose weight, this is not really an ideal way of doing it. But it can be helpful in seizure disorders and Alzheimer's disease. So they're controversial in that sense. You can use them for high heat cooking. As I mentioned, the ketone production can be helpful for epilepsy or other neurodegenerative diseases, and it can help if you're trying to get into ketosis. Just make sure to follow your lipid profile closely because we don't want you spiking your LDL cholesterol and increasing your risk of cardiovascular disease and stroke. In general, choose the heart healthy fats, olive oil, nuts, seeds, avocados, fatty fish, and try to avoid or minimize your saturated fats, and definitely do not take in trans fats, which are things like margarines. These are healthy. Okay, so this is summary. The majority of everything that I've been talking about is really going to be focusing on this, the training. So water for most hydration unless long training or session or hot day. Quality food, adequate protein, spaced out. Make sure you have fiber-rich, complex carbohydrates unless you're racing or fueling during a longer workout. Healthy fats. Monitor your energy levels, weight, body composition, and lipids, and practice. Practice your race nutrition during training. You do not want to go into a race without having practiced it. So that was then. That was like the majority of our lives is training, training, training. But here we are. It's race week. What do we do differently on race week? Well, you definitely don't want to blow out your colon. So you're going to need to start minimizing your fiber. So fiber is amazing for every day, but you do not want to be stuck in the porta potty, and you do not want to be bloated and have a bunch of GI distress during race week. So you need to start cutting back on fiber. And depending on how fast your GI transit time is, you might need to do it for a full week prior to the event. Then you need to switch to simple carbohydrates a few days before the event. White pasta, white rice. This will again minimize your fiber so that you can have lower GI distress and lower, frankly, lower poops, smaller poops. Prior to the event, about 48 hours, start to hydrate and increase salt intake. Do not be an overzealous overhydrator with water, or you'll get hyponatremic. So have your salt. Continue protein intake. Don't eat what you're not used to eating. Like when you're traveling to an exotic place, don't all of a sudden decide you're going to try something new, because who knows, right? Who knows how that's going to affect you? And the last thing you need is a bunch of diarrhea for a race. The night before, eat an early dinner. It will let you sleep better, and it will not sit in your stomach causing havoc for the morning after. Because generally speaking, we don't sleep so well the night before a race. So get that food in you early. And race day. Race morning. I like to recommend eating something small and gentle on your stomach a good amount of time before the start. Try 2 to 3 hours. Something low fiber, low fat. Fiber and fat increase GI transit time, which means they slow down the movement of food in your intestines. So you don't want fat, you don't want fiber on race day. You want things to get in fast, get easily absorbed, minimal pooping, okay? So things like oatmeal, a little bit of oatmeal, not too much because it also has some fiber, fruit smoothie, fat-free yogurt with fruit and granola, all of those things work. Practice it prior to race morning. For the race, focus on carbohydrates, and the exact amount will vary depending on how fast you run or cycle, what your intensity is. What are the weather conditions? Is it freezing or is it extremely hot and humid? What is your typical sweat rate? Are you sweating? Are you a fast sweater? Are you a high sodium loser? What's your fitness level? And how tolerant are you for eating and drinking on the move? And what is your body size? Body size is super important. So in general, while you're racing, for events that are longer than 2 to 3 hours, you essentially want to replace half the calories you burn during the event. So what does that mean? 1 to 1.5 grams of carbohydrates per kilogram of body weight per hour. So for somebody who's 120 pounds, that's 55 to 80 grams per hour. Someone who's 220 pounds, that's 100 to 150 grams per hour. You'll have to just read your labels, because all of these different ways to take in carbohydrate, they're all different. So you have to read what's in, how much carbohydrate is in your your chosen fuel. So if your intensity is low, like hikes or low speed ultras, it is okay to eat real food with some fiber and some protein. Your stomach, can generally handle that. But if you're doing a high intensity, you're going to want to stick with things like drink mixes, gels, blocks, and chews. Some people ask, okay, should you drink all your carbs? Meaning, do you just use an extremely concentrated solution or use these types of products, for example, that say that you can just put all of your calories and your electrolytes in your bottle and you do not need to carry anything else? I would say this, it's a personal preference. I think you need to do a trial and error and you need to watch for GI distress. And I made the mistake of using one of these. I had done it I had trained with it, but the difference is when you train with it versus do a full Ironman, the full Ironman is usually a lot longer than your usual training day. And by the time that I got to the marathon at Kona, I was trying to find every porta potty, and it significantly slowed me down. And that was because that was the first time that I had raced um, with this type of product. So even if you're trying it in practice, be careful because it might be the amount is just too much. So it is trial and error. We talked about gastric emptying. So if you want to speed up how things leave your stomach, which we do, we don't want it to be like super fast to where it blows out, but with just increasing speed, you in order to do that, there's certain things like when it's cold, if it's more liquidy, if it has less fiber, if you're not as stressed, you are more likely to empty your stomach more easily. So the take home point here is if you're racing at a high intensity, stick with as much liquid as possible, easy to drink, or gels. I mean, chews are fine if you're okay with that, but generally speaking, gels and liquid. Practice before race day. And sometimes that doesn't even work, but do the best you can. So my personal best Ironman race fueling plan was for Mont Tremblant. So the night before, I thought I had a poke bowl, but I had sushi. Sushi is great. It's plain rice. It's got the salt from the soy sauce. It's got simple protein, and it sits well in my stomach. And this is what I do every night before a race. In the morning, I had a smoothie. For the swim, I had a Humagel. That's my personal preference, pre and post. For the bike, I had Scratch in my bottle. I drank 1 bottle per hour, and I took in a Humagel every 10 miles, which for me ended up being 55 grams of carbohydrate per hour, which is right for my weight. And for my run, I had a Humagel in transition, and then I had a Humagel and a Scratch packet with water every 4 miles. So that ended up also being appropriate for my weight. So that ended up feeling really good in my stomach. So that was me, but you might be different as far as what works for you. And then post-race fueling, carbohydrates within 30 minutes. Realize that after a race, you're going to have increased protein needs because of your muscle breakdown. Please make sure to continue to take in enough. You also have an increased demand for phytonutrients and antioxidants. So really focus on brightly colored fruits and vegetables. And gut inflammation. High exercise intensity increases permeability of the gut. So it gives you leaky gut. So try to heal the gut for high diversity and quantity of fiber. And you will succeed. So thank you, thank you, thank you. We have time for questions. All right. So does anybody have questions? Obviously, I didn't go through a lot of supplements, other types of supplements, etc., but there just wasn't time. So what can I answer?
I have a question.
Yes.
Going back to hydration, I always struggle to drink enough, and I always my typical race um, dehydrated, and I try to take in more to make up for it during the race, but it's a struggle. And then also, uh, how do you know you're getting enough water? You talked about the electrolytes, but specifically water quantity. How do you know you have enough?
Um, you have to pee.
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, if you go through the entire bike, 6 hours on the bike, and you don't have to pee, that's a sign that you're not taking in enough.
What's a sign that you're taking in too much water?
It's hard to see in those porta potties. Um, but if your urine comes out like super clear and you're having to go a lot, um, and you're so generally speaking, probably going once during the bike, if you're doing an Ironman distance, is
Yeah,
about right. Um, you know, that's why people pee on their bike. You pee in your wetsuit on the swim. You pee in once on the bike, and then generally find a porta potty for the run. So if you can go 3 times, 3 to 4 times, then that's usually about right. But if you're having to go much more than that, then you're probably overhydrating.
got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, Kathy, related to that, is there a limit to the amount of water your body can absorb, like 12 ounces in an hour? Do you know what I mean? Is it sort of
Yeah.
useless to take on
I
more?
I don't believe there is a limit. I mean, there must be a limit, but not any that I'm aware of. Like we will significantly orally rehydrate people in the ER, for example. I mean, I'd have to like specifically look that up, but I will say this: if it's plain water, it is like instantly absorbed from the stomach, like so fast. Not instantly, but like very quickly. And if not in the stomach, then in the small intestine. Um,
Okay.
yeah.
Not like it gets wasted, right? Like when people talk about supplements and you're just peeing them out and it's not effective or doing anything for your body, that's not really true with water.
that's not right. Yeah, that's not right for water.
Okay.
For some supplements, there is a bit of truth to that. But
Limit. Okay.
yeah.
Thanks.
Other questions? You know, we didn't talk about things like benefits of creatine for you know, fueling and other supplements. We didn't talk about like ways to improve your VO2 max with the types of foods that you eat, but it just wasn't enough time. Maybe I'll come back and talk about supplements some other time.
If no one has any other questions, I will ask one more. I
Yeah.
know you said, without sort of having a test done on yourself, you don't really know. Is that test something relatively easy to get done?
I Outside of a research lab, I don't know of any. I know that Dean had it done as part of he was a study subject.
Okay.
But outside of a research lab, I don't know, because what needs to happen is you need to exercise in a contained location, and then every little bit of moisture, including your clothes and everything, has to be taken
Hydrate.
and washed in a special solution where they can see the electrolytes. I mean, it's an intense
Process.
process. Yeah. Oh, the other thing I didn't want to mention that I also didn't mention before, magnesium. So magnesium is super important to supplement with. We burn through magnesium like crazy when we're fueling, and it's not something that you need to do while you're racing, but I do recommend magnesium supplementation on an everyday basis for athletes, but especially if you've done like a long event. Then magnesium glycinate is the one that I recommend because it doesn't give you diarrhea, and somewhere on the order of 400 to 800 milligrams a day. So
Unmuted, yeah.
Kathy, it's Mira. I had a question about if you're on the run portion of a race and you're trying to stay hydrated, but your stomach starts getting sloshy. Does that mean that you're just taking in too much, or you're not getting enough electrolytes, or you're getting too much electrolytes? Like, what's that an indicator of?
so that means that your stomach is not emptying. So you have poor gastric emptying. Now, sometimes if it might be that you're going so fast and so hard that it's slowing it down. So it might not even be your nutrition per se. It might be the intensity of your activity. In which case, then that becomes a challenge, because if you're not taking in enough, then you're going to suffer from the standpoint of your performance. But yeah, so if you're feeling like it's sloshy, then you would look at that table that I had with the ways to improve the gastric emptying. So things that improve that are colder water, slowing down, sadly, slowing down, decreasing your intensity. I don't know, meditating, decreasing your stress levels. Dean is piping in smaller amounts more often. But the thing is, if it's already sloshing, that means you already have fluid in there that you're waiting for it to absorb, right? So taking in more at that moment is not going to help. You need what's there to go down. So usually it's more of a slowing down your effort.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right. So that's 7:00. Thank you guys for joining me. And we'll be this is recorded. You're welcome. This is recorded. So oh, thanks, Patty. This is recorded. So once I have it officially uploaded, I'll share the link with everyone. So thank you very much. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Kathy. This was great.
Thanks, Kathy. Thanks, Kathy.